And we are live. This is Naturally Gnar. I think it's at this point. I'm gonna be gambling at what episode this is because we're in the future now. In the present, you are watching this later.
Right.
We are pre-taping this. We have our special guest for season finale season 4 episode 12. That's like 12. It's gonna be 11 or 12. I don't know, dude. Dylan Earl in the house.
How do we do,
up, dude?
How do we do? Damn,
appreciate you being here. It's crazy. I never thought we were actually gonna have you in this studio. Even to call this a studio is kind of a joke.
This is a studio.
Whatever.
This is serious, man.
It is a studio.
Scot Ripple co-hosting.
What's happening?
He's hanging on this season finale. It is the season finale. And, in that, we wanted to do something like out of the box. And Dylan, dude, you're out of the box.
I hope so, I guess. I'd rather not be in the box.
Isn't it better to be out of the box than in the box?
It's like, that's real freedom.
Right?
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
I think so.
Caged
I think
up
so.
and confined to
Exactly.
the box's rules. So, you're out of the box.
There's enough analogies in there that I think there's something right. There's something right in there.
We could spin it to a positive one way or another.
That's
yeah.
right. But we're to let everybody know what's going on. Like the reason that we're pre-taping this is because when this airs, you're on tour. You're in the middle of this tour.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Yes, I will be. We're hitting the road tomorrow.
Yeah,
So.
Rehearsals tonight.
Yes,
dude.
Yeah, so we're also still kind of flying in wild. I've got a buddy of mine that's from he lives down in Dripping Springs. He's drums. He's kind of like and this is high praise. I think he's like the Dick Darden of Austin, because I don't know how many people here know Dick Darden. Dick Darden, but he plays on all the records of mine and has toured with me forever out of here. And Dickie D is in about 7 or 8 different bands at any given time.
Right.
So it's we've got a Dick can't come on this run, so I've got a buddy of mine. We're still gonna fly him blind, so we're gonna get real tight. And then luckily I've played with him enough times. He kind of knows how to do things. And folks down there are real good about. Being able to pick up in bands really easy. So we're just going to kind of roll in and play the White Horse on Thursday night. And half the dudes hadn't met Ben, but that's just kind of how it goes, you know?
Yeah, that's
great.
a good backup plan, though,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Keeps you on your damn toes. I love it. Every time I play like that and I do shows like that, it's gotten really, really fun. I play with so many different players from all over the U.S. and in Canada and Europe, and it's a little different because, I mean, shit, man, I play these songs 200 something times a year.
Yeah.
You know?
So when you do those, is it each time you do it, is it like a unique? Do you find that each time it's played, it's in a unique way because of the hired guns that you bring along?
Yeah, totally, and it's just like a lot of they're hired guns, no doubt, and it's also just buddies that I've kind of gotten to know through the scene, and it's people that I like the bands they're in and how they are in those bands, how they play.
Yeah.
And it's like whenever if I call up some folks, and they say, all right, well, on the record it's like this, I'm like no.
Throw that out the door.
Throw that out the door, dude.
No way.
Like I asked you to be on this tour because I like the way you play. You know, and I want to hear what you do with this. And
That's
so
cool.
It seems like it gives it kind of like a jam vibe, even though you're playing a show where people are buying tickets. You're like, but there's kind of like another side that you're just jamming out with some
That's a good
old
point.
friends and stuff.
That's
exactly.
a great point.
It keeps it so fun. It keeps it really fun for me. And then whenever I get to come back and do what I call like the A Squad, which is the Arkansas squad.
Yeah.
When I do the A Squad tours, it's it's like this like family reunion. But a lot of those guys, we kind of come in, as we all came into our 30s. Now I'm 35. I'll be 36 soon. And I think a lot of folks wanted to set a little bit more. They kind of had partners trying to, and everybody needs to do that,
Right.
And at some point I had to realize that, as I can't pay a whole lot, so it's like you kind of have to say, all right, am I in or am I out? But those guys will always be in.
That's
some
great.
capacity, the A Squad, and everybody really. But the Arkansas boys, when I tour with the Arkansas crew, it's like this is home.
That's great.
Nice. That's
so,
awesome.
Who are the Arkansas? Who's in the A Squad?
The A Squad is Dickie D on the kit. And there's two on the A Squad now, almost on bass. Chris Wood has played with me for a long time, and Chris Wood's recorded a lot of stuff. Charlie J. Memphis has been filling on the road a whole lot more, and is also on some of the recordings of the new record. So there's kind of like a I'm like, hey Chris, whenever you want it, spot's yours, but nice. Charlie's kind of the call guy right now, and he's been just a blast to tour with. Also, Charlie's way younger and kind of brings a little bit more energy. Holy smokes, youth energy. Yes, when you're on stage with a guy 10 years younger than you, I've never done that before, really, and I'm like, oh, holy shit, gotta like, here we go, man. Charlie's bringing the energy. I better do it too, because he's just so naturally full of it. And then we got Lee Zadro on the keys, and kind of got Grady Drug has been playing a lot with me. He's out of Springfield, Missouri. Grady P. Drug, and every once in a while I get Calvin Todd, who's on Beers and Gears this year. He'll come down on the pedal steel, but that's kind of generally a squad. And if we must, it'll be typically if we do Fayetteville stuff. That's not the Garhole thing was a little more special. But if we just kind of do a pop up Fayetteville show or Northwest Arkansas, it's typically Dick and Charlie and Lee.
Gotcha.
So we just do 4-piece, and I'm on guitar.
How did it go? How did the Gnar Holidays, was it?
Man, it might as well be the Gnar Holidays. It was pretty damn gnarly, I'll say that.
Gar Holidays. Yeah.
The Gar
Sorry,
Holidays.
I have a proclivity of those two letters going together.
Totally fair. Totally fair. Yeah, it was cool, man. I mean, there's I sometimes don't know if Northwest Arkansas realizes, or even Arkansas kind of knows like what Garhole's doing out there, and it's been surprising me as I tour and when I'm in Europe and stuff. And people are like, tell me about that Garhole, and you're like, holy shit, what? It's just like
it's turned huge. Yeah,
it's gotten really big, and it's been a really fun thing to be a part of with Kurt, who's really running the bones of the label. He and I used to live in a house called Shit Mansion together, and he played drums with me and when we were in school down in Conway.
Oh, cool.
So it's just, we were already throwing shows and DIY music stuff, and it's just kind of that whole thing's carried on. But he's obviously, I keep being like, holy hell, Kurt, like you got pro, man.
Like what this has turned into.
Yeah, totally.
That's cool.
And obviously like Nick being a huge part of that. And so, I'm really, I've really been enjoying getting to know Nick better. Through this, next stage in both of our music careers, and we're neighbors. Yeah. And, I guess over the last, I don't know, a good 10 years kind of getting to know each other. But I feel like I always saw Nick and some of those other guys in Fayetteville bands when I was living in Little Rock, and we would come up to Fayetteville and play, and would share a bill, and it was always like, oh, hey, what's up? Oh, hey, cool. And it's I kind of knew who that guy is, but
just more in passing.
Yeah, exactly.
And not like having like a professional, we're working together.
Right. Exactly. So, now it's kind of, it's cool to see everybody, I think that's I don't know, like we're all still having fun, and we're all still, kind of not giving a damn, but we still give a huge damn. If that makes sense. Or we're it's just like it's a job, and it's really cool to have such good coworkers.
Right.
That's cool.
Like I was like listening to your like style, kind of reminds me of like 60s. Roger Miller, John Conley kind of vibe.
Not a whole lot of people say
it. And that's the country music I like, like Conway, Twitty, stuff.
That's
like
a compliment, I would say.
Yeah, it is.
Compliment and a half.
Like that's the real deal. Like that's where it came from. I'm not really into the pop side of country.
Neither am I.
It was. How did you get to that sound? Did it just come out naturally, or you kind of knew what kind of style you wanted to play?
I think I think both those things, it was just kind of natural to me. My mom raised me on old country music, and so when I'd be going to, it is like we'd be driving in the I think she had an 87 O'Connell line. She'd take me to school and pop in tapes, and it'd be a lot of Willie and Merle were obviously some of our favorites, but digging into some like Eddie Arnold and whatnot, even some Gary Stewart. I and a little bit of Roger Miller, and so I think, like now I've started understanding why I kind of got back onto that style, and a lot of it's I think what happens to a lot of people, and here's just maybe a theory of mine, but people start to diverge, get away from country music, especially if you grew up around it. People of our age, and it was like right around 9/11. It was like 9/11 kind of ruined American culture in a lot of ways, you know?
Right.
It's just kind of like now we see all these, is like there's a flag on god dang everything.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, that's where this like nationalism kind of came into music.
Sure.
And country music wasn't really a nationalistic thing, you know? It's like even Okie from Muskogee was a total tongue in cheek, like kind of a joke on that, you know? And then Merle would be like, holy hell, all these people in Oklahoma
they really love it.
Yeah. It's like, it was kind of a joke. But anyway, yeah, so I just I left country music when I was a young teenager, and I was getting into all kinds of other stuff, you know, and you know, like the Strokes had come out, you know, and I was into Weezer and like, you know, whatever. And so and then Weezer started to suck, and I had to find other things. But
that's okay.
Yeah,
we know.
Yeah, we know. Like Pinkerton
we
was
feel
tight.
the pain.
We all dabbled in Weezer a little bit. Yeah,
Pinkerton was pretty tight. Other than that, I'm like, oh no,
right.
But anyway, anyhow, but yeah, I'd kind of I think what started bringing me back was the Drive-By Truckers. That's my all-time favorite band. I don't know if you listen to much DBT, but that's kind of as like that's like as heavy as I really ever got. You know, now later in life, I'm starting to discover some like metal I like, and I'm like understanding there's genres that I like for certain moods. You know, if I'm stuck in traffic, it's like, come on, give me some sleep, dude.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's just like dope smoker all the way through. Let's go.
That's cool.
You know, and it's you know, it's I guess DBT is real heavy in a lot of parts of their albums, but I also love that also they'll just kick into a beautiful country song. And I was like, oh, damn, that's the country I like. And then kind of from there, I got into Uncle Tupelo, which ended up being like Wilco and Sunvolt, and their more country stuff they were doing I was liking. And then I discovered what was alt country. And then I discovered that in the mid-'90s, there was this whole like alt country movement with, unfortunately, Ryan Adams is Ryan Adams now, but he used to be in Whiskey Town and Ryan Adams and the Cardinals, and a lot of that stuff in the 90s is awesome. It's like, oh, this was kind of as, you know, especially in the early aughts, as like this nationalistic radio country started to depart, there was people that were
not doing that,
and trying to focus on the songwriting part of it and staying away from the big money. And so big money just started really ruining country. And I don't know if you've been down on Broadway in Nashville recently, but it's just an absolute hellscape.
It's very commercialized,
late stage capitalist hellscape.
That's very apt. It feels like when you're in Nashville, everybody's trying to sell you something, and like it's a turnoff, you know, and you think that you're kind of coming there for this kind of like pure natured vibe of country music and the heart of that, and it just does not feel like that. I don't know if other people have other impressions of it, but like that's the vibe that I felt.
That's definitely the vibe. You know, I've got a lot of friends that live in the East Nashville side where there are people that are, I would call it neo-traditional to kind of keep answering your question.
Sure.
But you know, it's like developing that neo-traditional sound. So whenever I heard people doing it, I was like, oh, okay, like there's no reason not to keep making that kind of music. And yeah, I, you know, when I'd kind of gotten back into it, I dove deep, and like my 2017, 16, whenever I put that first album out, is like real heavy, like, all right, here's some like crooner country, you know, and so I've started trying to figure out how I can still hit that, but also like what else is there, you know, what are these other wild sounds and maybe more like country obscura, you know, because there's been freakies and weirdos making country music since it started.
Exactly.
You know, it's like, what are those guys been doing? You know, and it's like, what are those weird B-side records that you never hear? And even in some, you know, even if you dig deep enough in like, you know, Willie and Merle and Roger Miller, you know, stuff, and even some like Don Williams, you get kind of deep enough into those songs and like the back catalog, you're like, whoa, there's some weird sounds and some crazy experimentation, you know. And then of course you get in like the world of Lee Hazelwood and that approach to country music. And that's some like crazy studio stuff.
There's so many influences in this area, not just like Arkansas, but like Tennessee, because like Holly Springs is like the capital of blues, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and then, you know, you got a lot of blues music, you got a lot of bluegrass. Like we used to watch the Ben Miller Band all the time years ago when I used to live here before. And I've never seen anybody play like that before with washboards and stuff. So
pretty wild.
Really experimental.
Originally from California and moving out here in 2003 and then going to a show at George's and watches that, I was mesmerized. I was like,
whoa, right on.
Wow, I've never seen this like actually live before.
It's wild. Rachel Amons and the late Bob, Smiling Bob were good friends of mine and inspiration, even though I wasn't trying to sound like them. They were playing freaky weirdo country adjacent music. That was
Sure.
blues, that was rock and roll, that was
Yeah.
A little bit of everything.
southern dirt, holler, fucking whatever.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
There it was, the first one.
There, he broke the seal,
Oh,
ladies
man.
and gents.
And I ain't even drinking real liquor.
We'll change that. But yeah, no, that's cool that you were talking about the sound, because I think one of the things that when I listen to your music, the thing that I think about is, and I don't even know if this is intentional that you mean to do this, but I grew, like, my growing up in Arkansas was backwoods, kind of country Arkansas, Lincoln, Arkansas. I don't know if anybody knows about that.
Yeah.
Lincoln.
We go
Lincoln.
hiking out in Lincoln.
And
They got them logs out there.
they do got some logs. And so it's like, but it's a different kind of country living.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really know how to to encapsulate it, but when I hear your sound, I immediately think of being like far from town. There's like a case of Busch Light sitting down there, and it's probably getting a little empty. We might need to get another one before the night's out, and this kind of like feel that is backcountry Arkansas. Like, you encapsulate it like perfectly.
It's like blue collar country, man.
Yeah.
For me, that's what I like.
Yeah.
That's important to hear from y'all. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely not trying to make white collar country.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, you do promote living in Arkansas, and I mean, I saw the Arkansas when I heard that song, man. I was like, this is us.
That's the important part, I think, making those records. If I ever am going to talk about home, that there's hopefully things in there that is for y'all.
Yeah.
And the ones that know it.
And like you're speaking for us, like for the people that live here, like that sound is like kind of, this feels like us.
Cool.
And so I really do
it does,
appreciate
like
that.
some of the lyrics say stuff that only you can do in those parts.
Or feel, or
the
the vibe is present, So it's, I mean, I really appreciate that you're like taking what Arkansas feels like and taking that other places.
Well,
that's great.
I try to be careful with it, and I appreciate that, especially that folks that I look up to here in the state, like y'all, feel that way, because it's, you always, when I'm creating things, I'm like, am I representing my buds?
Sure.
Right? Am I representing the people, my community?
Sure.
Properly. So I'm pleased as beaches to hear about that, honestly. So thanks. Yeah. But I try to be careful out there, when I'm in certain parts, you go out to some places and people say, "Oh man, you're from Arkansas," and and they kind of look at you funny. And you might be some person from New York that might be a I don't know, an idealist,
sure,
or something in their own right, but and I'm like, yeah man, it's pretty terrible,
it's pretty terrible. You shouldn't come.
Yeah, I'm like,
I
man,
don't know if you're gonna.
I'm kind of stuck in a rut there. I'm trying to, any minute I can move to New York City, I'm out, man. Trust me.
Yeah.
So don't come.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
If you are trying to move south, you should check out Dallas. Great town. Awesome place.
Send them there. No, that is great. But yeah, that's a perfect segue for this. I was really curious about you touring abroad and like taking music far, this kind of music far. Mm-hmm. Where's some of the places that it's felt the most eye opening? Like you're sharing this style of music to a new audience.
Oh, yeah, I'd still, every time I get to go abroad, I consider it my last. I'm just like, it's amazing to get, to be received over there.
Yeah.
And, I try to go once or twice a year. And I would say to answer that, man, like Sweden and Norway, Scandinavia has just been crazy.
I was going to say Europe like that. When you said you were in Europe, I was like, I wonder how they like approach like American country music.
And that's what I was wondering, was like, what area specifically does it feel like you're like bringing something new to their space?
I think and I think it is also, it would probably be, like when I play in Stockholm, it's unreal. I don't know. Sweden has been really, really good to me, and I've played in some very rural parts of that country as well.
Yeah.
And I've done, just towns that I can't even remember the names of because you can't even hardly pronounce them.
Sure.
But, like you play for very rural people, and they can they still get some sort of sense of it when you're just like talking about the country. They're like, oh man, like I really like this. It makes me think of this thing. Or sometimes I'll get a DM from someone that I might have befriended out in Sweden. They'll be like sitting out like on a tractor and be like, man, listening to I Saw the Arkansas sitting on the tractor watching the sunset.
That's great.
I'm like, holy hell, that's amazing.
That is.
So that's been really, really cool. But I think also there's certain places and like Oslo is, like Norway's been one of these too, but on a smaller scale, just because it is a smaller country. But it's the study. People are very curious about it, and when they're that curious about it, they enter into it academically almost.
Nice.
And it's interesting, and they're so curious about this evolution of the country thing, and then all what we're talking about. Earlier we're talking about the commercialization of country music. I've hung out with some gals in Stockholm that have a country study circle. And which I want to attend more.
That's amazing.
But they're talking about these issues, in an academic setting in university. And so they're talking about like rural America and like what is this kind of slip into like early stage fascism that we're experiencing? Like why are rural people supporting this? Like where's the departure? What's happening in culture where there's a schism? Because you see people classically, as we've witnessed in this last election, voting against their best interests. It's rural people that are totally voting themselves into poverty. So it's and they're studying that. And that's interesting. And in England too as well. England, I think, feels like there's a little bit more of a connection because so much of country music that at least is obvious to an English, more traditional listener, that becomes very apparent. Because so much of our tradition and a lot of our songs come down. I mean, for instance, I went over and I was playing in Old York up there, and after the show, I was staying in this little vicarage, which is like a residential spot that's de-affiliated but still attached to a church. It was like this old 12th century church, crazy shit. So we're in the backyard, passing guitar around. These kids go into Wild Mountain Time, and I was like, "Oh man, my granny used to like sing that every once in a while." I was like, "That's crazy. How'd you hear that song?"
You know that?
And they're like, "Dumbass, it's from here."
Yeah.
And it's like, oops. Oh my God. So, I started covering it, and then I was like, "Holy hell!" And you see a whole room of people in London or Bristol or something like that, and they're all singing
every word,
and they know every word. But you realize also that you're kind of singing the more like country version, or not, but like country,
countrified,
countrified, where it's just like the words change a little bit, and then like you listen to them sing the old version, and it's like more old English of you're like, oh wow, that's just how language changed as it went westward, and eventually it got to like Southeast Texas where my granny grew up, but a lot of those people came up the Sabine River there in the 1820s, a lot of them from England or resettling after one generation out of the colonies or out of Eastern America, I guess, at the time.
Well, and that's another thing
I can get into that.
No, that's great. No, that's perfect. Cause during those times, when there wasn't any, means of recording, the only way for music to travel was to be played through other people. Exactly. And so that's why you have these different versions of the same song, because it's been passed down so many different times and played so many different ways through so many different influences that changed it along the way.
Exactly.
As it was heard.
Exactly. And I think I try to also make sure folks are pretty aware over there of like, okay, let's be, there's a study of country music that needs to just be a little bit more ethical when it comes into terms of taking into account all the cultural influences on it. Like this wasn't just white folks, is what I'm getting at.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And so that's kind of an important thing to say, hey, if you guys are interested in this, like make sure you're taking into account these angles. So
like the study group you were talking about.
Yeah. And it's just like, so like enslaved African folks had it really kind of invented modern country music almost, and whatnot. So it's like we got to give flowers where flowers are due and not try to be, a lot of our history is written incorrectly because it's by the victors of the people that were in control, of course.
Of course. Yeah.
So
always is.
Yeah, even in the Country Music Hall of Fame Museum is great, but there's just such a small mention of this. I'm like, damn, y'all, like this should be like a whole absolute.
It should be like almost like a whole other leg of the museum.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
You know, and so making sure that people are taking that into account, not be like, oh, the Cowboys, and it's like,
it wasn't
like these were like sharecroppers, and a lot of oftentimes blacks and whites working side to side, or side by side, in these in like heavy impoverished places. So.
Well, yeah, it was the in music, and this is always the case. It's about like it's disparagement. It's like when you're in an sort of impoverished situation, it brings on hardship, and it's gonna come through in the music,
right?
And that's where you write like some of the deepest.
Probably
stuff.
like a stress reliever after the hard day's work.
Exactly.
Right.
Cracks open a beer and
I hope
tries to have some fun and sing.
Exactly.
I mean, really, I feel like that's what it is.
So yeah, exactly, and I think that's the origins of. There's a lot more solidarity amongst the working class. I feel like in the origins, in the advent of American country music, and obviously we've gotten away from that. And it's like I might call them the square toes, or those folks. It's like that type of typically white guy that is into bro country, the bro country.
Yeah.
And so it's you're like, man, like this comes from you just hate to kind of see that schism that I was talking about earlier, is like people voting themselves into poverty, or in this case sometimes voting themselves into deeper misogyny. But I think going back to kind of folks from different walks of life being kind of solidified together because of this type of music is the kind of the aspect of it that I want to focus on, at least. That wasn't very clearly laid out.
No,
so
I get it.
Edit me out.
We'll get that in the post. Yeah. But I think it's basically what you're saying is there's a difference between writing and representing the kind of music that you're creating versus like if somebody were to go into like an AI music generator and say, write me a country song about eggs and bacon and, my sweetheart on a summer night, it's going to spit it out to where bro country guy is going to love it.
Oh yeah.
Like he'll probably be like, what's this new song? Who's that?
Right.
And like to the fans of those people, or like those type of fans, I feel like I'm curious if alt country, like where that line is blurred and when songs land and don't land,
Yeah, and I guess that's where kind of alt country comes from in that whole thing, is it had to start calling itself alt because it was trying to step away from what people were calling country music.
But was it also not being accepted either?
There's just an underground fandom for it. You know, and that's kind of like this interesting deal with country music now. I think where I exist, where Garhole exists, where a lot of people exist that are my contemporaries and my peers and my friends, is that we all kind of exist in this like underground that's just thriving, I think, underneath the mass country, No,
and so it totally, it reminds me a lot of underground hip hop. Underground hip hop and the way that it exists under the veil, like it's there and it's huge, but above it nobody sees it, and so it kind of seems like it has like a to some people it feels small, but then when you start to see the effect, like I mean again, like what Garhole's done and all of the artists inside of it, the exposure is huge, but like to the average, we'll just air quotes country listener, they don't know.
Yeah, they wouldn't know. There's an occasion that maybe someone's probably heard of Nick before, possibly from YouTube surfing. Yeah. But that's even super, super rare,
I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah, but whenever you do, like for instance, the whole Gar Holidays thing was, I think the ticket sales, at least for the Saturday night, were maybe something like 80% out of state. Like people traveled.
I saw that.
People traveled in, man, and they came out for it, and so it's which is super neat. That people also want to come here and see what's happening.
That's great.
Because when we're out, people are like, "What's happening in Arkansas right now?" And I'm like, I don't know, man. Same shit's been going on for a while.
Yeah. We're actually just doing the same thing we've always done.
Yeah. It's been going on for a while like that. I never felt any need to move to Nashville. I never felt any need to move to Austin. I play there enough. I don't need to live down there, and I'd much prefer living in the great damn state of Arkansas, where I can go get free water coming out of a rock. That's pretty cool.
That's right. Natural spring.
Man, ain't nothing better than that. I always
it really isn't.
I load up a 5-gallon jug in the back of my truck before I'm going down to Texas, just so I don't want to drink any of their water.
Yeah, right.
It is down there, like I was raised down in deep South Louisiana before coming to Arkansas, and when I was a kid, a teenager, and I just like I can't believe when I go back there and I drink some of the water they used to drink out of a hose when I was a little kid. It's like holy hell.
Yeah.
Wild as hell, man. So.
No, it's funny. I was in Eureka Springs not too long ago, and there was like a spring that we walked up to, and we were a little lit. It was a good night, and the spring was running, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna grab it. I'm gonna drink some, and one of the girls that was with us was like, oh, what are you doing? It says not to drink that, and I was like, I'm gonna drink water from the ground.
Oh, that's like that magnetic water or something.
Yeah, well,
is it magnetic?
Magnetic.
There
is no, you're right. There is a magnetic springs. Is it's like there's Passion Play property, and then just south of that is Magnetic Springs. That's but and I think it does have magnetic properties.
There is. Yeah. There's some creek that runs through there.
You might need to look it up.
Yeah, I don't know much about it, but I did.
This sounds cool. I want to go drink magnet water.
Yeah. It's heavy metal.
I want to research it first, but
I feel like I'd get way better and heavier on guitar.
There you go. You just want to. That's what you. That's what you take on tour.
Yeah, that might be it. Be like, the show juice. All right, boys, we all are going to take a couple shots of show water.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. But yeah, so the tour. Is there any places that you're headed that you haven't played before?
No, that's the fun part about Beers and Gears. As you see, this is the 7th edition.
We
missed a year for the COVID year, so this this is 8 years after the first one, but. It really hits kind of all the party spots, all the rowdy spots, and as you see, I try to start and end in the great damn state of Arkansas.
There we go.
But North Carolina,
I do like that.
Yeah, you know it.
Yeah.
North Carolina, as you can see, I got 4 on there. North Carolina has been a second home. It feels very similar to aspects of Arkansas.
Yeah,
the people are very similar.
We've heard that.
Yeah. I like anytime I feel like Arkansans and North Carolinians get together, we're like, oh, okay, totally get this. You need a beer? You want a beer, man?
Yeah. I mean, we both got a Fayetteville.
Totally. Man, there's funny stories about that. So North Carolina is kind of where we end the year, except we usually do one back in Little Rock or Fayetteville afterwards. But North Carolina, we hit those big shows, and we got to hit New Orleans again, and I'll go do some of the honky tonk stuff down in Texas, the few little remaining spots I like. I mean, to be honest with you, I absolutely hate, I cannot emphasize enough, hate driving through Texas.
Oh, really? Yeah.
It's just one of the worst places I've ever had to drive through. I hate it. It's even, I think it's surpassed between New York and Boston is my least favorite drive in America.
Yeah.
Between Dallas and Austin, I really hate it. But the White Horse in Austin's been so daggum good to me, and that's kind of, it's not the oldest. It's about 13 years old, but it still has the old Austin feel, kind of before Texas really entered into late stage nationalism. And San Antonio, I feel like is like the Little Rock of Texas. It's like the ugly redheaded stepchild down there, And there's some cool weirdos that are doing cool shit down there, and then Houston, there's kind of some folks doing good stuff, but so got to go down there and do some of those. That's some serious dancing, and the New Orleans night will be a big dancing night too.
Oh, yeah.
I love playing a dancing show.
That's great. Really? And I would imagine that New Orleans is much more dancey than the majority.
Yeah, definitely so. There's a scene in Austin that's kind of hard to beat anywhere. I'll be honest with you. Between the White Horse, Sagebrush,
I've always heard that.
Point, there's and it's cool. It's freakies learning how to old school dance, and that's a lot of fun. And those shows are just always rowdy as hell. Especially the White Horse would be one of their anniversary shows. And but San Antonio's good. Oh yeah, Rupert. Oh man, so Rupert just made himself known. Anyhow, Houston will be good too, but New Orleans it's fun to play Austin, and then New Orleans kind of on the same route because they Cajun dance, a two-step in Austin and Cajun dance in New Orleans, and I like to do both. I mean, it's just a difference in one step. It's 2 forward, 1 back on Western, or Cajun is just 2 forward, 2 back.
Oh, but you can't screw that up though, right?
Yeah, and Cajun you I feel like you kind of dip your shoulders a little bit more, whereas Western you kind of keep your torso pretty straight,
square. Yeah.
So I like that. And in North Carolina, they're just They're just drinking.
They're just drinking.
Yeah,
just flopping around.
Yeah, well, that's good. Cool. That's good to know.
It's pretty cool.
That's good to know. We still got some drinkers out there.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then we finished this one up in Little Rock, and there'll be a little bit of dancing going on, and trying to bring a little bit more dance in Northwest Arkansas too. We just did the Legion as part of the Gar Holidays, and So,
how was that as a venue?
Sick. It's really cool. Really cool. I hadn't been to any of the hardcore shows that have been there. I've always been out of town, but I kept wanting to go see those.
Yeah, I've always heard.
I'd gone to the Legion for their Wednesday night, like old folks dance night, where you know, it's like me and whoever I bring out with me are the youngest there by like 40 years, but it's pretty cool, including the band.
Right.
But I've been talking to some people about, I think we're going to try to do a monthly at the Legion and try to do a dance lesson and teach dancing, because I think dancing culture is really, really fun. It's really interesting. It kind of invites the room to interact and to be a little silly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's when shows are good, people are moving. Yeah. I mean, there is nothing worse than a stale room.
Absolutely.
Listening to music.
Oh man, it's like it's like playing in Nashville when everyone's just got their arms crossed, thinking about how they can do it better than you.
Oh man, dude,
you feel it there.
I'll never. This is a great story. I was doing a Christian music tour.
Go on.
Yeah, and it was funny because it was a bunch of different genres. So it's like you had traditional Christian music, praise and worship, but then there was like Christian metal, and then there was like hip hop and pop, like singing pop stuff. And to see rooms change from like they're so confused as what they're hearing. The one that I'll never forget it. We were in Midland, Texas, and there's this rapper who is very popular now named NF, and he started in the Christian market. He came out to a bunch of blue hairs, and they were not ready to hear rap music. Mm-hmm. And I mean, rough. Bumping in their face. I never seen there was 5,000 people that were just.
Oh wow! Did he not just whip into the Christian material to like help himself out and be like, "Well, you start talking about God," and all those people might be like, "All right, okay, I can get behind this."
As a rapper, I don't know if you have that material.
Oh man!
You can't fall back on the hymns.
Yeah.
Oh man, that must have been rough.
It was rough, man. I after the show, I talked to the rapper, and he was like, "I might quit."
No.
That's a hard thing to play your music to a room of people that do not want to hear what you're spitting out.
I think you need that though, every once in a while. It just makes you better.
Has that ever happened to like you played a show that people weren't expecting what they were hearing?
I think yes. It happened. Unfortunately, one time we got invited to go. Fortunately, we got invited to go play Pride in Beaumont, Texas.
Okay.
And I was stoked about that because Beaumont, I was my mom's from around there originally, and so I went down there getting real excited about it, and I just think the crowd wasn't ready. This was like before there was like a country is cool wave. Now like country is cool.
Right.
And I think it would have been way different, but. We went down there, and then like this room, like there was like a DJ before us, and then they put us on, and so everyone's like been dancing to Diana Ross and having a great time, and then it's like us, white boys from Arkansas are like, all right, here you go,
y'all ready for this?
They're like, oh, the room cleared, and we're like, I was like, oh man, but I think the real funniest time was. I used to, and I still do. I like to work a little sacrilege into the show,
Sure.
And we were playing something. This is like 2000. That was probably 2017.
Okay.
But one time, it was 2016, I think. First tour, Dickie D was on with me, and we went out. We played like Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and we played one of those moonshine places out there, and. And it was a good guarantee. Like, you're not making any fans doing that.
Sure.
And so we were playing this thing, and a couple people were kind of coming in after their tour and sitting down for a bit. And this one old man sits down on his rocker, and he's, like, loving it. He's so into it. And then I was just like, I can't remember. I think we were about to kick into, like, a Dwight Yoakam song, and I said something like, Hail Satan. I don't know, whatever. Something maybe offensive. But this old guy just, like, got up and was just, like, so disappointed. He was like, no way. And, like, literally did phooey at us. And he walked away. And we were just like, well, whatever.
You had him the whole time.
I had him the whole time, you know, and I was like, yeah, maybe I say, glory G to Jesus, all hail them or something like that. And he was like, oh, phooey.
Yeah, you ruined his night.
But you know what? Our night wasn't ruined.
Yeah.
We had a guarantee in one of our first hotels we ever got, you know. Like,
oh, that's great. We got a hotel room?
Yeah,
Jeez.
we were partying, dude. Yeah. Partying.
You basically made it.
Yeah, we had made it, man. It was like the only hotel room we got that whole tour. We're like, we're gonna enjoy tonight, boys. You know.
You travel in a van, right? Like you have like a setup.
Yeah, I got a bit of a little setup. I had I used to drive. I had a 2011 Econoline that blew up 2 summers ago, or not this past one, summer before that. I was in Europe and a band was broken down in Little Rock, and they got in my van. I don't know if they had bad luck, but they blew up my van.
They carried it with you. They carried that luck with the van.
Yeah, my motor blew out, and I was like, holy hell. So, but my buddy Jono, who's coming on this tour, helped me out significantly, and I was in Europe at the time when I heard the news, and I was like, oh my god, fuck.
You're like, what are you gonna do? Yeah.
So Jono, just without me knowing it, I went to bed in Sweden, and I woke up the next morning, and he had set up a whole GoFundMe and all that, and just because he's an absolute homie, you know, and so he set up a GoFundMe, and you know, within like a day and a half, I had like $7,000 or something like that, and was able to. And he found a van. My mom lives in Central Tennessee now, just west of Nashville, and so he found a van that was 5 miles from my mom's house on a national search. He just searched nationally, and he was like, "Man, I was gonna fly out to anywhere in the country and pick one up and drive it to you before you got
back."
Yeah. And then he was like, "Actually, I don't have to do that." And he was like, he just called me. He's like, "Hey, change your flight into Nashville. There's a daggum van right next to your mom's house.
Nice.
Just 5 minutes away." And so I went out there and I checked it out, and it was, the guy had it listed for $7,000, and I test drove it and told him what I was using it for, you know, because he seemed like a guy who like maybe won the lottery or something like that, and just like kind of came into some money. Like he was like country boy.
But like, why do you have all this money?
Yeah, and it was like, and he like looked like he was just trying to, because he had just got this land over by my mom's and was like working on it and stuff like that. And he just like was just kind of out there sitting in the back of his truck, just telling people where to go. It was just interesting, and so I showed up, you know, and he was like, "Yeah, I bought it as like a project van to take my kids around and look at Christmas lights once a year." And he's like, "But it's just sitting there. I hadn't gotten it fixed up, you know." And it had 64,000 miles on it.
Whoa!
In 01 was 64,000 miles, like an old Triton, you know, one of those good old Triton motors.
Yeah,
I was like, "Damn, that's a good motor in that truck." And and it was already gutted out, and I was gonna repanel it anyway. He was like, "Oh, it's all gutted out," and I was like, "Oh, okay, you know, like thanks for doing that work for me." Yeah,
it's perfect.
Yeah, you know, so it was gutted out, and I told him what I was gonna do for it, and he was like, "Man, how about $5,000?" You know, like, that's why I felt like he, you know, like only like people who know what it's like being broke do that kind of stuff.
That is true.
That's when I was like, "Oh, you're like." You've just now got a lot of money, and you know, you're just like,
you still have poor spirit.
Yeah, you still have poor spirit. Which more people need poor spirit,
you
know. And I was like, damn. He was like, sounds like you're gonna do something really cool with it. So just like $5,000, that should give you enough to like put some new tires and put the work in it. And really needs it. And I was like, damn, dude. So
that's like real generosity.
Yeah,
real stuff, man.
Right there.
So I just picked up that van, drove it back to Arkansas. Put new tires on it, got the brakes worked on.
Able to stay with mom while you were there.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. You know, and I got, you know, had to do a lot of rebuild on the front end to get the bearings repacked and all that stuff. You kind of turn into, when you tour a lot, you turn into mechanic.
That is the truth. Yeah. You break down every other stop.
You know, and I got to shout out CNC out there, down there in South Fayetteville. You know, Corey and Josh and them, they all keep me on the road, and it's funny because you drive through and it seems like they're probably working on all the bands.
The bands,
you know. You see someone's truck out there, you know, and you're like, "Oh man, what's happening?" You know, like Dickie D, I saw his truck out there one time, and Corey was like, "Yeah, the motor blew up on him. He had just bought it, but they put a new motor in it, you know." And
that's great.
Corey and those guys, they also know that these are working vehicles.
Yeah.
So they did a lot of stuff, and it's nice because Corey's, you know, telling me, he's like, "Hey, you should replace this now. This you should start saving for." You know, et cetera. Because most mechanics would be like, "You need this."
That's right. And actually, the way that they're looking through it is like a different lens. It's like a different lens they are looking through for you as a musician, and like basically, I'm gonna put it real to you. You need this. You could probably put this off if you're gonna drive to Nashville and back a couple of times. You're gonna need to do this,
Exactly.
you know, and he'll be honest with you.
It's so nice to have that, and yes, endless shout outs. And I've even called those guys when I've been on the road and been like, hey, my thing's doing this.
What do I do?
Yeah, and they're like, oh, and even one time I had a speedometer on my old 2011 that would drop out, and I was like, is this alternator related? Because I had a night off and I was with Rupert solo, and so I was about to camp in like southern Wyoming somewhere. And I'm like, hey, I'm heading out to like the sticks right now. Like, and he was like, oh, and his mom was like, actually, that model of those years of dashboards on the you know, the dials will sometimes just like die out, and it's just like a weird thing that happens.
Right.
I was like, okay, I don't need a new alternator, but you know, I was like, okay, do I need an alternator? No.
But at least you had that person to like.
Just a quick call. So I've been meaning to buy that dude a lot more drinks than I have, because I keep being like, oh, you another drink, and it's like, man, you owe me like a couple tabs, but you know, so hey, Corey, I'm gonna get you some drinks if you're listening.
You know, when you get good friends like that, you know, they'll help out, and that awesome. And again, that's where I think that, you know, as a business shout out, it's you know, you think you go to a mechanic for general mechanic reasons, but it's more than a mechanic.
Absolutely. You know? They really understand what I'm doing with my vehicle. Yeah. You know, they understand where I'm going, where I'm traveling. You know, they might even keep up with, you know,
with the tour.
Yeah. You know, just being friends on the internet.
It would be something to where like, hey, I see that you're going in between, you know, these two spots in Texas. Watch your coolant level.
Totally.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That kind of stuff. So that's totally invaluable. And I just, I appreciate those guys so much, and they keep a lot of us on the road.
That's really cool. That's super cool. Man, I'm pumped that you brought up Dwight Yoakam, because that is probably one of my favorites.
Hell yeah.
And it was one of those ones that I always felt shameful for liking with country fans. It was because you were talking about like alt country kind of deviating and kind of trying to find its own home.
Mm-hmm.
I think of Dwight Yoakam, because like it was that I couldn't say I liked Dwight Yoakam songs around like an average country fan, because they'd like look at me weird.
Yeah.
You know,
Dwight kind of treaded that line a little bit. You know, he really treaded that line where he was just undeniably whip ass at the songs he was writing.
Oh yeah.
But he also was since his start, he's been anti-establishment. You know, I mean, you probably know his story when he started up in like LA clubs opening for punk bands and stuff like that, you know,
and which honestly like helped develop the sound that he had.
Absolutely.
Like when he was actually hitting hard, it was from that.
Absolutely.
That influence.
I think I feel like there's like the real ones you can tell, and I was really fortunate to be. I was the twangiest guy amongst all my friends whenever I was living in Conway. You know, when I first met Rupert and stuff like that, and we were playing and. At the White House, or my house was Shit Mansion, or the Blue House, or the Brick House. There's several little DIY spaces we had there.
A lot of colorful houses.
Yeah, absolutely. Real colorful houses. But you could walk to each one, and multiple houses could have shows, and people would kind of share show nights. And but even then I was more of on like the drive-by truckers aspect of like alt country southern rock kind of stuff. Without I hate the term southern rock, because it just like I see a Confederate flag whenever I say it, and that's
sure.
This was like anti-southern rock, maybe that's it.
I think it's just southern because of where it's placed at.
Yeah, exactly.
Know, where you're located.
Right. So yeah, I think it's Dwight had kind of a similar thing. All of his buddies are in punk bands, and all my friends are in punk bands, and I was really fortunate that they even were letting me play. Yeah,
Well, I mean, that's where I think that's where skateboarding really can relate to all of this, because, skaters always have been that melting pot of like the random weirdos, and everybody likes different things, but you're all still friends somehow.
Yeah, you just got a different vibe about you, different style, different something, but we all have this one thing in common, and all that other stuff just goes away.
Right.
I've always liked that about skating. I did a little bit of skating in middle school, and I might have landed a kickflip a couple times, but
that's good.
But I was like, all right, I made it, man.
That's good. You went pro.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, but
now you can retire.
I used to have an indoor park there.
Okay, Goodwill.
Hell
yeah.
Goodwill was the,
Goodwill, man. That's right, dude.
Yeah.
Goodwill.
Yeah.
Man, but yeah, I would never tell anybody I'm a skater now, but
right.
but I always really appreciated that about it. It was like the inclusiveness of it, the community aspect of it,
Yeah.
And no one had to be anything at all.
Well, I mean, that was when escape videos was actually where you would see like music really come out, because people would want to kind of share what they like in a skate video. And so, that's where I think a lot of skateboarders get exposed to a bunch of different music. You're not locked into one at being a skateboarder.
Totally.
Well, and country music, especially the old style, like the White Yoakum and some of that stuff, it plays a big role in skateboarding. A lot of people country music.
I'm struggling to remember which videos it was, but there has been videos that would dip.
Yeah.
And
totally.
And like I said, I appreciate it, because like you were saying, like I grew up with my mom listening to country, and so when I get around like the punk rockers or the metalheads, I always felt like, oh, maybe I shouldn't tell them that like I grew up listening to George Strait and Alan Jackson and and then I'd say it to somebody and they were like, oh man, me too.
Me too.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not a weirdo,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. There's a total time as well that's I think fading a little bit, and I think it may be in skating as well. That like if you said you're into country music, you'd like discredit yourself as an artist.
Yeah. Well, right. I think it's like there's a time, like the melting pot is heavy right now, and everything is highly blended. So, which is, I think it's generating different music, and I'm hoping that we're moving to a time where, like, even you being a musician and in taking old influence, putting a new spin on it, and then trying just different things here and there. How often do you feel like you push outside of the box, or do you feel like you're stuck in a box, like in the music that you make, or do you try to push the boundaries each time?
I don't really feel stuck in a box. I think every time you put out a record, you have a clean slate, and so you have an endless amount of opportunities to create something different than the last record. That's an infinite thing. Well, ideally if we live forever, of course, but no, and that's what kind of we're getting back to earlier. You asked me like my sound, my first full length that I did was it sounds like the songs, sound a little different, but it's all like kind of one vein. It's like more of the crooner classic style. And then the second one I did, Squirrel, was where I really started trying to experiment with tones. And when I really got excited about the potential to make an album that sounds sonically incredibly diverse, but is still cohesive. I think that's interesting, because you listen to albums that are great, but every song sounds the same kind of.
Oh yeah,
it's gonna put your ass to bed. Quick.
You can only do 2 albums of that before that gets put to rest.
Exactly. So I feel like every album I want to have a couple songs that call back to very traditional country, and then there's hopefully a break. And I saw the Arkansas, there wasn't as much of an experiment there as the last one. I think a lot of songs just kind of fell into certain vibes, sort of, but hopefully the pace of them, the key changes and things like that still kept it interesting enough.
And also the composition, the album composition, song to song, I felt like was really cohesive. I felt comfortable going from one to one.
Cool. And that's important. And that's stuff I don't really get a lot of feedback on. So it's nice to know that, because I'm actually in the process right now with the next one of I think the masters are it. I think I'm going to give the thumbs up, and now it's just because we also need to master them in sequence as well for vinyl.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'm kind of figuring out sequencing right now and how this is going to work, because I want it to feel like an adventure. I want you to be on a bit of a roller coaster, but I don't want you to feel like you're on a rattly roller coaster.
Yeah. I felt that way. Like White Painted Trees was pretty cool. I think that's the one that had a little spicier drum snare hits with, I don't know the lingo on drums or anything like that. But
I barely do either. I'm still in band practice, like a
and then like I could be wrong again, but then then roll into Buddy, and it seemed like a swing beat or something like that a little bit more. Yeah. And so it was getting changed.
Yeah, and that's the journey. I mean, I feel like, like you're saying, sonically, you want to be moved. And I mean, if you're listening to an album, especially if you're like throwing on an album, maybe like you're driving for a long time, you want it to the best possible thing for a musician is that nobody hits next.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't want anyone to hit next or feel like they got to skip through anything. And I think a favorite thing that happens for me whenever I pick up an album is that I discover an album like in a pocket, like that's kind of like around maybe a single I've heard.
Oh yeah.
And then you like kind of go through those 3 songs, and then finally like you let that 4th one play a little, and then you're like, oh man, and before you know it, you're going through the whole cycle.
And then you become a fan.
And I think that can be a really fun experience. So if I can, like, how many pockets, like, do these pockets work together, and how can I arrange them to almost trick someone into getting into the cycle? You know, it's like it's hopefully a very polite, nice trick, but
it's a no. It's a polite trick that all musicians are trying to play on everybody.
Absolutely.
The funny thing is, the song "Buddy," I just envisioned that you're cruising with your dog, but I didn't know you had a dog until now.
That's awesome. He's usually there with me.
So I was thinking
that.
Buddy was about your dog.
Man,
I'm probably not. You know, everybody has their own perspective on what lyrics and what a singer's talking about.
That's not an incorrect perspective at all. I think that's a really cool perspective, because it's, I mean, and that's I'm glad that there's still that room for that interpretation, because in my head I know exactly what it is, and it's like,
that's a good point.
You know, so I'm glad that that's.
Yeah, because we may not know what the heck you were thinking when you came up with those lyrics. It could be your own personal experience, but I was just like, sounds like he's hitting the road with his dog, because it doesn't sound like he's with a person, but then sometimes it is like you're getting some beers, but then I was like, but it doesn't mean that it's...
You could do that with your dog.
He's getting a beer with his dog, so I was like, I think he's traveling with his dog. I didn't even know you had a dog.
Well, I'd never considered it, because I do, Rupert's not coming on Beers and Gears because that's going to be the party tour, but he comes on a lot of tours with me, and especially if I'm solo, so I hadn't, like, that's why I'm like, holy hell, maybe it is just Rupert.
But I bet, like as a musician, you hope that you're writing stuff that has like deepness to it, like some depth, and you're like, sometimes you may not even be aware of your own depth. I think that totally is the case here, and I'm so intrigued by how folks interpret my music, because obviously like in my head there's like visceral, literal scenes. Like Buddy is kind of almost specifically built around this routine drive we used to do a lot between Denver and getting home. We'd finish a tour in Denver, and then it's just like load out, and then we load out and be like, we could go crash and then drive back or we can just start going. Yeah, and like the amount of times, God dang, Rupert, he's ripping him over there.
He's ripping him over here.
Is Ripert?
Ripert, man, senior
Ripert,
senior stink over here. The master of musk.
That's great.
Booyah. Anyhow, it's it. I think we've done a lot of late night drives, but I always envision this one that's always out of Denver, and it's like 10 hours. It's driving through Kansas. It sucks, and the amount of times I feel like Dickie D will take the first leg, and there's one in particular I kind of wrote a lot of this around, and it's about this time I got. I took the second leg, and so in Salina we switched drivers, and it's like after the show, and it's about 5 a.m.
Yeah. And
I pick up a cup of coffee, and I like roll a joint, and I'm like, all right, let's go. And I was about to spark that joint up on 135 heading south towards Wichita.
Oh, dude, that's a dangerous spot to spark up.
I know, man. But I was like, it's 5:30 in the morning. And I think we had played like an earlier Sunday show. We were done at 10.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, like it's Monday morning.
Super late.
5:30, 5 in the morning. I could be
you could be going to work. Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I've kind of passed like they're looking out for drunk and fucked up people,
Right.
And so. Yeah, I was about to spark that joint, and the lights came on, and it was just that the light was out over my plate, but it was an excuse to pull me over, and we had this interaction. I'll tell you this whole story real quick, but we had this interaction with this cop, and he's like, all right, what are you guys doing out here at 5:30 in the morning? So we're like, oh, we're a band. He's like, a band, huh? And he's like, what kind of music we play? You play, and this is like the classic answer. You say, both kinds, sir. He goes, both kinds, yes, sir, country and western. And of course he was like, oh, this is just us being like, all right, here's our good old boy. Like, you
that's
gotta
right.
just like,
we got to get through this.
Yeah, I got to dig it out of the pocket and
that's
just like,
right.
good old boy the hell out of this cop.
That's right. That's right.
And so we're like, both kinds, country and western. He was like, oh, damn, all right. And he's like, boys, you ain't got any, because I'd made the mistake of saying we'd played in Denver. And he's like, you boys don't have any contraband in the vehicle, do you? And my buddy says, without skipping a beat from the front seat, no, sir, we don't have any contraband. We're just a country band. And damn, and this is like, dude. And so like he walks back to his truck and makes sure we don't have any warrants and stuff like that, and comes back up and he's like, gives me back my license. He's like, all right, here's a warning, and I'll print this out for you in case you get pulled over for it again. The light's out on your tag, back there in the state of Kansas. You can't do that, but I see you guys are going home. Just get a change. Cool. Yeah. Great, cool. And he's about to walk off, and he stops. He goes, all right, I just got to ask you boys one more question. We're like, all right. He goes, what the hell is a country band from Arkansas doing with a Bernie Sanders sticker on the back of the truck?
Oh, no.
We were just like, you didn't really want to vote for Hillary, man.
You did everything in your power to good old boy yourself out of that.
Yeah.
Dude,
Forgot the sticker.
Yeah, I was like, damn, all right. It's like, that's why he was asking about pot.
Yeah.
Everybody out of the van.
Yeah. He heard Denver and he saw Bernie.
Yeah.
And he's like, these boys are smoking.
These boys are smoking. I can smell the reefer in their blood.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's
so
great.
there's just like that drive. I think that whole, not every aspect of that song, Buddy, comes out of that exact drive, but a lot of it when I just had to pull imagery, and it's like I described to a lot of people the thoughts that roll through your mind when you're standing out in the cold, gassing up your truck at 4:30 in the morning. And you're like doing a red eye somewhere through the plains, and it's just like looking up at a fluorescent light in the middle of nowhere, like, does my mom know where I am?
Right.
So, but your buddies is who you got with you.
That's right.
You're out there on the sea by yourself.
Yeah.
And you have no one else but your buddies.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where that, and I had to like hat off to the band, the A squad especially, but the boys, anyone who's willing to roll it, get in the truck and they're just like, yeah, I'll sleep on some floors and shit.
Yeah.
Like, all right, well, we'll try to do better than floors, but I'm glad to know you're willing.
Well, that's a buddy.
It's a buddy.
A buddy that'll show up and show out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, man.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm fortunate to have a lot.
That's great.
And I do have a good buddy right here too. This dog has seen some miles, man.
Country pup.
Yeah, he did the last real big one he did on the West Coast. I was opening for Nicky Bob. I guess April of 23, and I was solo, so it's a lot easier to have him in the truck. I had a TM with me also because we're playing bigger rooms with Nick, and that was a delightful tour. There's green rooms everywhere too, so it's a little easier. Some of these spots I'm playing here are like hole in the walls. And, it's like this poor dog can't hardly see where he's walking anymore. He gets up underneath people's feet. He does it to me all the daggum time. So, but he's definitely a buddy. He gets in the damn truck.
That's great.
Yeah.
Man. So, a lot of you've had a lot of appearances on Western AF. One of my favorites is when you play with Judy Blank.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. How did you get connected with her?
Man, that's a crazy connection. I was doing, my friend Graham Weber works for House of Songs. They have that house up here in Bentonville. I don't know if you're familiar with House of Songs.
I am. Yep.
There's a house in Austin. There's one in Bentonville. And to be quite frank with you, I'd seen it. I was like, oh, this kind of seems a little hokey, a little cheesy. I'm not really sure I want to do this. But then Graham's working for him. I was like, well, Graham's cool. And he's like, hey, man. He's like, I know what you're thinking.
I know what you're thinking.
Okay. He's like, he's like, I really want to have an Arkansan in the house. He's like, I want you to come up. And he's like, it's all people from outside of the country and outside of the state. He was like, you can go back and forth to your house, back home and come up here, or just come up and stay in Bentonville. So I went up there and stayed, and I met one of my best friends, Jonathan Terrell, who is just such a whip-ass writer and singer and performer. I write a lot with him. But then Judy was also there, and Judy's out of Holland.
Yeah.
And which is amazing how well she writes in English, and it's her second language. You're like, oh my God, you get the nuance better than I do.
It is insane.
It's insane. Yeah. And then there was Brandy Zidane from Canada. Let's see, Jamie Smith. And let's see, who else is on that? Oh, Els Bailey out of England, good friend of mine still. I see her over there. She's out of Bristol. But really cool crew, and we kind of had structured songwriting. We all just kind of stayed in this house, and we had 2 sessions a day, 3-hour sessions. We'd wake up, have breakfast, get coffee, do our first session, then we have a show and tell. And there was like no pressure. You don't have to finish a song. It's like just what you got.
Just play. Yeah.
And everybody managed to finish something. And there was a lot of stuff, we paired off and we kind of round robined around, and then there was an afternoon session. And then, we kind of all paired off and everyone kind of got some that they liked, or, I've talked to Els and she's like, I didn't get one out of that I really liked, but I got parts of a song that with permission of the other writer that I used in my other stuff. And so you're getting something.
Yeah.
You're getting the
something productive
flowing.
was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very productive,
Yeah.
you know. And I got a couple songs out of that weekend that I loved, and one of them was Never Said a Word.
I don't know.
We wrote that song in like 90 minutes, and it was like one of the craziest experiences I've ever had writing a song, where I'm just like, it was there. I had heard it before.
Yeah.
And both of us had heard it, but we were both just trying to remember it. And it was just like, which is really weird to say, but that's how it felt. I've never had something that I was like, oh, this already exists. And we had
like, it felt so natural as it was coming out that you were just more so recalling it.
Yeah. And when we sat down in our peer review, we were like, hey, y'all, we think this is original, but we're not really sure. Can you guys? And everyone was like, I think that's original. We're like, all right. You're like, because it was just like, have we heard this before? Is this?
But it came out so naturally, like you were just you remembered something.
We were remembering it together, and that's why we just wrote it so
crazy.
fast. It was wild, and it opened, that whole experience opened my eyes to collaboration in a different way than I really thought. I used to really, because especially I think I'd gotten this mindset because so much of like Nashville pop and this popular country music is written by other people, and so I was like,
true, yeah.
my pride was like, I write my whole damn album and I perform my whole damn album. These are my songs, you know.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, oh wow, collabs are really where it's at a lot of the time, and you can roll on things. And now I've gotten to where I get to a certain point with some of my songs, and I'm a lot more comfortable sitting down with artists I like. And if the mood's right and you're not forcing it on a moment, but you're like having coffee in the morning, you're crashing at a buddy's place, be like, hey, I'm stuck on this spot. And a lot of times those friends, you know, are like,
get you through that spot.
Yeah, and they'll be like, have you thought about this? Just like you said to me, Buddy's your dog. You know, I'm like, damn, I just never would have gone there. I never would have gone there. And that's all you need. It's like, it like springs the gate. And then you're like, oh, cool, I'm out, you know. And with Judy, we roll so well together. And I was in Europe shortly after this, and we recorded the 2 singles we have together in this whip-ass studio in Utrecht. This guy, Pablo Vendepel, he's in this band, rock and roll, big Dutch band called De Wolf, and the studio's like in like on a canal. You know, they have like these little, I guess, storage areas that then there's a road built on top of that, and then the storefronts on the other side of the road. I don't know if you've been to Holland or kind of seen it. It's a lot like Amsterdam if you've seen pictures of Amsterdam. But anyway, so we're like, the studio is just this little, it's like a cellar, so it's a round top room, and it used to be where boats would come in and they'd unload stuff that needed to stay cool in those cellars. So it's a really interesting room that sonically works. The shape, it's a circle. And
I can already hear it.
It was all analog to a T. The only time there was a computer is when he'd finally bounce everything through the machine all the way into his laptop, just so then he could take
so you could
that
have
home.
A final. Yeah,
exactly. So but the mixing and everything happened on the board. Everything was all there, and it was the first time I'd ever sat with just one condenser mic, no headphones, no monitor, nothing, you know. And I was like, oh, I don't hear myself. This is kind of freaky. And we just did it 26 times until the 26th time we were like, oh shit, that's it. And every time was good, but we knew it wasn't right. And Pablo was just like, I'm gonna push you guys, and we just ripped it straight on the tape. And the 26th time we both finished, and we were like, that was it.
Yeah,
we're not getting and it wasn't just like we're not getting any better than that. It was kind of like
that was it. That was it. Yeah,
and that performance is one of my favorite performances I have. Is just me and a friend sitting in a room, you know, around a condenser about 3 feet in front of us, you know, and played great. That, and then we had, you know, Pablo dubbed the bass on top, and then a friend with a steel came over and did a little steel on it, and that was it. But we wrote Throwing Lines, the B-side to that, the night before, and we were like, we were thinking about doing a Roger Miller song, actually.
Oh, wow.
And we're like, I was like, man, you know, I was like, damn, Judy, you know, that last one just kind of fell out of us. We haven't even tried to write another song since then. She's like, let's just try something. I was like, let's just throw some lines around. And then she was like, boom, here you go. And I was like, what? I never would have heard that. You know? And then it's just like, and then I was like, oh, well, throwing lines is also a term for fishing. You're like fishing for lines, and throwing lines is like, whoa, fishing for words to say. Throwing lines, yada yada, and then that's how that. And then there's a song to explain the rest of how that worked out.
Yeah. Nice. If you want to know the rest, listen to the song.
Yeah, totally. So the connection with Judy has been really special, and
that's great.
We wrote that song on her you know, her parents' kitchen table the night before we drove down to Utrecht and recorded that. And
that's great. That
was just like still one of the most special projects we've been a part of, and
that's great.
And we've got another one. We released a Cajun tune recently. That came out as part of a project down in Austin. My buddy does this song confessional thing through KUTX, and so we did another song we wrote on the road. on the way to the session, and we got Lost Bayou Ramblers to play on it, like Grammy-nominated Cajun band.
Oh.
They just happened to be in town for South by, and so it's just like this whip-ass Cajun
and you
song.
just like happened to be in the studio.
It just
Yeah,
it was
great.
one of those magic things. So, but we got off the phone a couple days ago talking about planning. I'm going to go down to Louisiana and meet up with Judy, and we're going to write a whole duets album.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, like, you sound so natural together. Like the like, you know, your voices just marry so comfortably that
It feels really good.
it feels good. Yeah.
And it feels good for me. And you know it when you sing with certain singers, and it just like the light goes off. We're like, oh, I want to do that again. And it's when the right cake and the right icing come together, I tell you what.
Yeah. Baking cakes.
That's pretty much what it is.
Cakes.
It's a really neat feeling.
Oh, that's great. Well, we're pressed for time. We all have things that we have to do, and you got to get out of here, get to rehearsals tonight. So we're cutting this portion of the show short, but we're gonna get a song from you.
Absolutely,
one song out.
Yeah, I'd love to, and I honestly, I could sit here and talk for hours.
Oh, dude, that's what we always say. Like, everybody thinks that this is gonna be tough, and then you get down, you're like, oh wait, that was an hour. I had a couple more if you wanted to keep her going.
Yeah.
You pop a couple of beers, and then you're just like, you can stay here all night.
I'm here all daggum night. I don't know. I've had a really killer time getting to talk with y'all, and I don't know. I've definitely been peeking in at Gnarkansas for a long time, and been like, hell yeah. I'm like, I don't really know who these guys are,
but I like what I see.
Yeah, I like what they're doing. You know, like, this is pretty cool. You know, anytime my boys from Springfield, they showed up at my house just before I left when I was walking out the door. And I was like, yeah, I'm doing a podcast. I was like, who for? And I was like, Gnarkansas. They're like, oh, that sounds cool.
Oh, that sounds cool.
They're like, awesome. Yeah,
that's rad. Well, I think if I have a goal is Nick has been in a lot of Gnarkansas, like, skate edits and stuff.
Right on. Cool.
I would love to use a Dylan Earl song for an edit.
Hell yeah.
I think that could come out with some pretty interesting stuff.
Maybe we'll collab on I got a new album coming out. Maybe we'll just make that a music video. You know?
Yeah, dude. I'm interested.
Honestly, this is a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
Okay,
dude,
I'll just release a song as a skate vid.
Dude,
I do it with mountain biking, like, you know, for just Instagram reels. You know, I'll just pick a song, and I'm already going, I'm probably going to use a song on there.
I just try to pick things out of the box.
Yeah,
you know?
just something
and it's
different.
like, but also like identifying with like the feel of Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, like I said, your sound just has that. So like, I don't even have to try. Like, I bet I could stab in the dark and I would still find a song for an edit.
We're always out in the sticks somewhere riding our bikes and
Yeah,
jumping
that's
and
what's
stuff.
up.
And it fits.
Man, I feel like I haven't asked y'all any questions this whole time.
It's not an interview for us.
Yeah.
All right, well, you'll have to tell me what you guys do off the air here.
Yeah,
that's right. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to take a break. We're going to reset the studio, and then we'll come back for the performance.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I'll figure out what to play in the meantime.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
That's perfect. Okay, we'll see you in a second.
Cheers.
Yeah.
All right. This one's for anybody who spent any time in Little Rock. Let's just say that. Here we go. Down to Little Rock Bottom. Birds are chirping, my pipes are bursting, I'm scuffing up the threshold of the warehouse liquor store. Clerk said, son, you know that's 6 days and going. I said, I never seen you before. My rent's late, the party's never over. I head down to the river, I'm gonna roll her over and make another day just by killing time. Left-handed cigarettes and fortified wine. Well, I ain't asking for help or a pity, just another week of snaking around this dirty southern city. Guess you can't catch me if I'm going nowhere, living down in Little Rock Bottom. Let's go. fun while the sun's down all night in Midtown. I'm hanging with my friends behind some corrugated tin. And if I'm gonna die just from living down in Little Rock, I guess I'll live a little till then. Well, I ain't asking for help or a pity, just another week of slinking around this dirty southern city. Guess you can't catch me if I'm going nowhere, living down in Little Rock Bottom. All I can do is sit here and whittle away at my problems that cut me down the middle. So I'll drink all your bars dry and smoke them if you got 'em right here in Little Rock Bottom. 'Cause all I can do is sit here and whittle away at the problems that cut me down the middle. So I'll drink all your bars dry and smoke them if you got 'em right here in Little Rock Bottom. I'm dragging knuckles down in Little Rock Bottom. I guess I'll sober up when I'm dead. And because I can't help myself, because it's the finale of this season, and dadgummit, I'm gonna have to do you a Jimmy Driftwood song. I dream of the rippling fountains at midnight, wherever I roam. Someone on the top of the mountain is beckoning me to my home. The songbirds sing in the wildwoods that grow in the rocks and the rills in the beautiful White River Valley, in the shade of a blue mountain hill. We just love these hills, don't we, friends? The mockingbird is gay in the bodark. The pine trees are sighing above. There's no place on earth like the Ozarks, this wonderful land that I love. The songbirds sing in the wildwoods that grow in the rocks and the rills in the beautiful White River Valley, in the shade of a blue mountain hill. And the flowers bloom in the sunlight have filled me with 10,000 thrills in the beautiful White River Valley, in the shade of a blue mountain hill, in the shade of a blue mountain hill. That's Jimmy Driftwood. Remember, alternate facts are not facts. That's a fact. Friends, say no to fascism. Have a good day.